always been a sucker for a period piece. There's something about the old times that was just so simple, yet harder, more peaceful, yet more terrifying. So when I came across this movie and I read the synopsis, I knew I was in for a treat. This movie not only turned out to be a psychological trauma film, but it also dealt with the struggles and the mental illness of a mother, Margaret, in very declining circumstances. She lost her daughter, Ada. She takes care of her other two daughters, Rose and Ollie. These three had to deal with the absent father, Henry, who had to travel away due to work so that he could send them money. And it seemed like this family's world is just falling apart. The dust storms are causing death, sickness, complete annihilation of their crops, and madness in the community. To make matters worse, the trains are delayed because of the dust storms, so they're not getting money from the father Henry. No crops are growing, the cow isn't producing milk, starvation is on the forefront. But for now, they make do. But let's discuss the main point of this movie, the Gray Man. Before we discuss him, we have to backtrack on a few things of importance you have to know. The Gray Man is introduced via a book that Rose reads to Ollie, to induce fear in a harmless way. It's just a big sister scaring the little sister at bedtime sort of thing. But the trouble actually starts as soon as the movie starts, and you may not realize that. Margaret's paranoia is showcased even through her smallest micro expressions and the underlying themes through the movie's camera work. The mother has 2 consecutive dreams, one being a nightmare for a dry drowning in the dust storm that comes frequently, foreshadowing. You see this pop up even in a matter of 1 to 2 seconds. Boom. This induces the feeling that something is off with Margaret from the start. On the parallel of this nightmare also comes a very peaceful dream. It's actually more of a memory, from a time things were a lot better before the Dust Bowl came along. But now in the present time of 1933, her and the daughters are plagued with isolation, starvation, and poverty amongst the community. And the movie dives deeper into the issues inside the house, which is the one place you think their safe haven would be. And we soon learn that the issues arise inside the house may just be as bad, if not worse, as the situations that are occurring outside. The movie suggests Margaret had some sort of episode after the death of Ada, and is required and highly dependent on sleeping pills. And as the movie moves forward, we see her supply get lower and lower and lower and lower.
You're taking your sleeping aid?
To the point where Rose asked the mother, will it happen again? All this paranoia slowly comes full circle with the introduction of the Gray Man, which is a channel that all three share, and the paranoia grows. It quickly manifests itself as soon as the morning after. So if you've seen this movie, let's get into the big question. Was the Gray Man real? Well, let's talk about it. Apart from your normal horror movie fake outs they have, we discovered that there is someone actually hiding inside the barn. And this was an eerie scene where we see Wallace, coming up from the floor, revealing himself as a desperate man, seeking shelter from the dust storm, and who was supposedly sent by her husband Henry to check on them. Margaret notices red flags immediately. For instance, he's wearing Henry's fucking jacket. This induced a brand new fear because early in the film, it is mentioned at church that a drifter allegedly broke into a neighbor's house, tied up the father, and murdered the rest of the family. Now things do die down, things do get better temporarily, and Wallace, being a man of God, performed small miracles like curing Rose's nosebleed, making it rain outside, getting the cow to start producing milk again. Even the situational worry about the drifter is kind of dissipated because at the next meeting she attends, it is stated that now they believe that there was no drifter at all, that perhaps the father went crazy and did it. But eventually, of course, it all comes crashing down when a letter from Henry finally reaches the family. And the family is shocked when Henry reveals that Wallace stole his coat, stole the money, and probably murdered one of his co-workers. And I was telling myself at this point, this scene in particular really irritated me. And this is somewhat of a nail-biter scene when this happens because Ollie is on Wallace's lap. And Margaret, being the stature of a woman that she is, even though she's fucked in the mind, somewhat, it's not that bad at this point. But up to this point, Margaret has been portrayed as a mother who has it together. No matter how bad it gets inside, outside, it doesn't matter. She's going to provide for her daughters, and her family's going to be okay. She even signals with her hand like, Rose, go get the gun. While Ollie is sitting in Wallace's lap, she's giving her secret hand gestures like, 1, 2, 3, run, I'm going to shoot. But she doesn't fucking shoot Wallace. I was like, you crazy bitch, what are you doing? Why are you scared? Even after Ollie gets out of harm's way, she is scared to shoot this man. He burns the letter right in front of them, so they can't go to the sheriff to prove anything. But the interesting thing about this now is that on the way out, Wallace looks at her and says, you can't stop me, I will be back. You can't stop the gray man. Now, the gray man in the book is described as a supernatural entity. That you breathe it in, it takes control, and makes you do terrible things. Now, this is a perfect metaphor for everything that's going on in their lives right now. The Dust Bowl, breathe it in. The sickness, breathe it in. Especially scarlet fever, which what claimed Ada's life. You can breathe it in. Now, I personally believe that there is many angles you can look at this to decide if Wallace was ever real or not. But at the end of the day, I believe it's the director's goal to have that answer remain ambiguous. And this is the start of the decline of Margaret. She stops taking her sleeping pills. She stands outside, stands guard to make sure Wallace doesn't come back. Rose tries to comfort her like, hey, I gave him the book. He read the book. He's just trying to intimidate you, trying to scare you. The gray man isn't real. Like, come on, get a fucking grip. So they all move into one room, which Rose says, Mom, you're not supposed to be sleeping with us. They gradually stop leaving the house, and the community gets worried. At this point, Margaret's mental health just declines and declines. She's having hallucinations, daydreams, she's not sleeping. The latest dust storm, she becomes so mind-fucked that she's hallucinating Wallace and accidentally kills her sister. When the sheriff comes, Rose actually sticks up for herself and Ollie says, hey, she's unfit. You can tell she didn't want to, but then Margaret kills the sheriff. She even wants to kill her remaining 2 daughters and herself so they can join Ada in the afterlife. Despite the mind-fuckness, it is sad that Margaret is in this state because she will legit do anything to keep them together. But personally for me, this is where the actress who played Rose, Amaya Miller, stole the fucking show. Her ability to showcase her emotional breakdown and having to resort to killing her mother, who she loves very much, in order to save her little sisters and her own life, man, that was beautiful. A very powerful performance, very powerful scene. I loved it. The ending beautifully ties in the 2 dream sequences I mentioned earlier. Rose wasn't able to kill her mother. She was going to stab her mother with the knife that she used to kill the sheriff. But Ollie walked in, she's like, well, fuck, now I can't do this. So instead, cleverly, she tricks her mother into saying, oh my God, I couldn't stop her. Ollie ran outside. So of course, Margaret runs outside to try to find her. And there's this huge dust storm. But Ollie's just fine in the house. She's hiding in the closet. Rose goes and checks on her. And Rose emotionally has to cut the rope that Margaret has attached to her house so she can find her way back. We then see that very nightmare come true of her dry drowning in the dust storm. And it ends with her death. And in that moment of death, we see that memory of her in the field. Her favorite memory. The one she's always daydreaming about. The girls even ask the mother almost every night at bedtime to tell them about that memory again. Very, very beautiful way to end the film. The sun comes up and we see Rose and Ollie on the train, traveling to reunite with their father Henry. But just then we see Rose look over and she sees the dust. The exact same way her mother did throughout the film. Personally, I believe this is a metaphor for mental illness, and that Rose herself will eventually fall victim to the Gray Man. Overall, it's a pretty intriguing story, and the set, the cinematography was all damn near perfect. It was a believable cast that really brought out that 1930s lifestyle. And the later half of the film, it really made you question what was real and what was not. It's really easy to try to speculate these films and break down these scenes, what's all in her mind or not. 95% of the film is told through the mother's eyes, and the mother is not fit to be a narrator of the story. Because truthfully, she was mentally ill from the beginning. I think the biggest takeaway about this is that the Gray Man wasn't used as plot armor, but instead was a metaphor or a channel of what the mother would actually become. She became what she feared the most. She breathed in the dust, the sickness, and she did in fact do those terrible things. It had excellent uses of underlying tones that really complemented the themes and story at hand. To rate this, I'd probably give it a solid 7 out of 10. And this is based on a first time watch. This is one of those films you rewatch time and time again. And the more you watch it, the more you break down these scenes, the more you start to speculate and theorize about these scenes. For instance, Wallace, was he ever real? There's so many ways to look at this. Maybe the girls all share this delusion. Maybe they're all fucked in the head, and Wallace was never real. Maybe Wallace was real, and after it all came crashing down, he never came back again. It was just all in Margaret's head. You see my point here? There's also this scene before Esther dies, where she comes and checks up on the girls and Margaret, so they go to this town dance, and Margaret cuts her fucking leg to use it as like blush makeup, I guess? I was like, whoa. But as they're at the dance, she starts bleeding through her clothes. But if you pay attention to later scenes, the stain is on the back side, so it's almost like in certain scenes her dress is backwards, making you question what's real or not. If you haven't seen this movie, there's a buttload of scenes that you can go back and rewatch, or even on a first time watch, and try to dissect what the fuck is going on. But again, it's very subtle, and I do think that's one of the strong points of the movie. This is a movie I'm eventually going to watch again, just to solidify my answers about what's going on, because I'm still up in the air about everything. But if you have seen this film, let me know your theory. Was Wallace real? Was any of it real? Did I miss something? Let's start a thread, baby. Drop it down below. Thank you guys so much for taking part of your day to kick it with me. I love you all. Until next time, adios.